I guess. Hey, everybody, it's Harris Fellman here. Welcome to the Tellman and Fellman Show. As I said, I am Harris Fellman, and this is...
Tellman Knudsen. Welcome to the Tellman and Fellman Show. We are here today with special guest Pablo Lemberg that I think I met a bajillion years ago, probably in the StomperNet offices, I'm thinking. Is that true?
That sounds about right.
Yeah, so we're going to go way back, and we're going to talk a little bit about the long view of internet entrepreneurship and marketing from your perspective, Paul, what you've seen because you've been in the game for a long time and you're still active and doing cool stuff, but it's changed dramatically from what I understand. I
changed my name. So
yeah, well, there's that, right? Well, you should talk about why you changed your name. This is all really
well for people that haven't met Paul in person. I will say, or Pablo, I guess
either one. I will answer to either one.
Okay, Dr. Senior Dr. Lemberg. Paul Lemberg is a best-selling author of a book called Be Unreasonable. He is a world-renowned business coach who has recommendations from some of the best business minds on earth, Jay Abraham being one of them. Tellman, I don't know if you saw that on the website or not. Aside from his business skills, he also practices his own special brand of chaos magic, which is pretty funny because yesterday we were just talking, like, I'm a magician, but a stage magician, and I was like, I don't do real magic, and now we have somebody here who maybe does real magic, so we can talk about that as we get into it. But why don't we go ahead and why don't we get started by maybe you just telling everybody how you got started in business and how long ago you got started in business, and bring it up to 2020s.
Cool. It goes pretty fast. So I went to art school, and the reason I went to art school is because I'm wildly ADHD, but they didn't have words for that then. Or they weren't using those words. They weren't identifying people with it. And I was a terrible student. I could barely sit still from like the time from when I can remember. I got to college because every good Jewish boy from Brooklyn goes to college. And I went to college. And as soon as I got there, it was really clear that this was not the place for me. It was really clear that sitting in classes and taking notes and taking tests and writing papers and all those things was never going to work out for me, at least over the long term. So I said, how am I going to do this? How am I going to survive college? So I figured out two things. First of all, I went to college when I was 16. So I was 2 years younger than every other girl that was in my college.
Wow, and wait, you went to college, you graduate from high school 2 years early?
Yes. Yeah, I was 16 years old when I went to college.
Wow, so you graduated from high school 2 years early and went to art school.
Well, I went to art school as a defense mechanism because I'm 16 years old.
Yeah.
I'm 2 years old. I don't know what I'm doing there. I can't sit still in class.
Where did you go to school?
I started in New Paltz, State University of New Paltz in New York.
Yep.
And I went there because I didn't apply to school till like March. And I said, get me into a college somewhere that's not in New York City. So that was the place that would take me.
Yeah.
It was a very heavy drug school, but I said, how am I going to survive this? And I figured out that I could survive it by going to art school. Because art school, there's no papers, there's no tests, there's no really sitting in classes. So I became an artist. I became an art student. I had no talent at all, but somehow I got into art school. And I spent it took me 6 years. I graduated from the University of Buffalo. I had to get away from New Paltz because there were too many drugs there. And it was too easy for me to partake in them. I did acid for a week at a time, things like that. So I got through art school. I got out of art school, and I said, I'm not good enough to be an artist. I'm going to be a starving artist, and I didn't want to be a starving artist. So what am I going to do? So I had a mystic vision that I should become a software designer.
Were you on LSD at the time?
No, I wasn't.
Okay, go ahead.
No. I always had this recollection that it was a roommate of mine who had told me to go be a software designer. But when I figured out the timeline years later, that timeline did not actually explain the story at all. So I don't know where that vision came from, but it was go be a software designer. Anybody can program, which is not necessarily true, but that's what I was told. So I follow directions. So I'm like, okay, I'll go be a software guy. And what was really weird about it is I knew how to program without having ever taken a course or ever studied it at all. I just knew how to program. So, and people without degrees or education or training or anyone else don't get jobs. And I had a job, which I believe is another part of this whole mystic story. I got a job. And on the first day that I walked in, I knew what I was doing, which also makes no sense whatsoever. And if you don't put this story in the mystic context, none of it makes any sense. So I became a software designer. I was very, very good at it. I bought myself I bought a mainframe. I programmed the mainframe directly. It's called bare metal programming. It's when you write in the language of the machine itself. And I was a bare metal programmer. I ended up creating 2 different software companies, both in the international banking world. And I became like an international banker, which was kind of cool.
Whoa, okay.
I wasn't a banker at all. I was a software designer. But I was in that banking world, and I spent my time. I told you I lived in London a little bit. I used to commute from New York to London. I had offices on Regent Street. I was living this very cool life. I was traveling around the world selling software. And at one point, I had the realization that I liked people more than machines. And I wanted to get away from the machines. I had 100 programmers working for me at one point. And so I had these 100 programmers, had to tell them what to do all the time. I'd really rather
hold
be
on. What year was it that you had 100 programmers working for you?
I had 100 programmers in 1982.
Wow. All right.
Were they people or machines? Just to be clear.
No, those were people.
Okay.
Those were people. I made this very bad decision, which was to hire the smartest people I could find. And
most people say that's a great decision.
the problem is if you have like 100, I didn't have 100. I didn't have 100 of the smartest people I could find, but I had 10 of the smartest people I could find. And the problem with the management team of where everybody thinks they're the smartest person in the room is really difficult to manage. And I had
a lot with Tellman and I. Tellman and I usually butt heads because of this. Yeah.
If you think you're the smartest, my definition of coaching.
Neither of us think that. Neither of us.
My definition of coachable includes that you don't think you're the smartest person in the room.
Or at least if you are, you can keep quiet about it and like hold your breath.
Right, but it makes you a shitty coach. It makes you a lousy coachee because you don't listen to anything they say.
Yeah, and it usually makes you a jerk and not cool to work with.
Yeah, it was probably a lot of a little of those things, or a little of a lot of those things.
Yeah,
times 10.
So I did this for a while. This was great. We sold the first company, made a whole batch of money, and then after that, I started to think that I really would rather be. I had a father-in-law who had failed, I don't know, 6 times, massive flame outs. Just when things were going great, he would flame out. And this just happened to him over and over again. And then by the time he was the father of my first wife.
For clarity, tell us what flame out means.
Flame out means that all your money's gone.
Yeah.
Flame out means that the warehouse burns down like 2 weeks after your partner forgot to renew the insurance.
Right. I mean, somehow, one way or the other, there's like a major catastrophic event that ensues after, immediately.
That's why they call it flame out, right?
Okay. I want to be clear on what your definition of flame out.
Flame out is never a good thing, no matter what your definition of it is, right?
I don't know. In San Francisco, flame outs can be kind of fun to watch.
That's true. But generally speaking, flame out's a bad thing. And this guy had flamed out over and over again. until by the time I met him, he had cashed out and put 20 million bucks in his pocket. So I'm looking at this guy, and I love this guy. Fred was fantastic. He was like, I have been blessed with wonderful in-laws, two sets of wonderful in-laws, and at different times. And so I'm looking at Fred and I'm going, how does he do this? He keeps spinning up businesses, then he kills them off, and now he's this wealthy man. So I said, what's he got that I don't have? And what I decided was he knew how to sell. That's what he knew how to do. And I didn't. I was a programmer. I knew how to bare metal program, but I didn't know anything.
That sounds so badass. Bare metal.
Oh, that's why I say it. It's like it sounds so much better than saying you're an assembler language programmer.
That's right.
Right? Assembler language programmer, people go like, what's that? You know, bare metal programmer, they go, wow, badass. What's that?
Yeah, they think like you're programming in the middle of a battlefield. And it's like
and it was sort of like that on some days, you know. That company was really rough because I had this big ass payroll. We couldn't typically make the payroll. I would borrow the money out of my account. I had this giant credit line from Citibank, and I would borrow the money out of my account. I would pay for the payroll and pray that the banks would pay us, you know. And then the banks would pay us. The money would come back into my account, and then we'd go through that every few months. And it was scary.
No, I remember some phases of my company like that where I just didn't have any of the money management skills.
And the worst thing in the world, this is like $1 million tip. The worst thing in the world is to ever be the slightest bit late on your payroll.
Right.
Absolutely. And I was never late on my payroll. No. Because Citibank gave me this unreasonable line of credit that I didn't deserve, that somehow they just gave me.
Right.
Well, you were able to pay it back all the time. I mean,
I always paid it back.
So you deserved it. I mean,
right, but it didn't work it doesn't work that way. They give it to you first.
Right.
Then they see if you pay it back, right? You know, the world's changed a lot in, I don't know,
30, 40 years, yeah.
30, 40 years, the world has definitely changed.
So how did you end up from, software engineer? I think you sold that company eventually.
We sold the first company, then I started a second one.
Similar?
And exact same business.
You didn't have, when you sold the other company, you didn't have a non-compete.
I had a non-compete. They blew it.
They blew it.
They blew a detail in the non-compete. You know, law is all about the details.
Yeah.
And our attorney had slipped something into the agreement that no one knew was there. We didn't even know it was there.
Uh-huh.
We had no idea this thing was there. But he slipped this thing into the agreement, and then they did this thing over there. And he calls us up one day. He says, they've blown your non-compete. So when I was fired, this was before we knew about the non-compete. But when I got fired from the first company for doing illicit things in the office. And so when I got fired, I walked out with a box of 9-track tapes, which was our software.
Okay.
I just basically stole it all. And so but I couldn't use it legally because there was this agreement in place, but I figured it might come in handy. So I stole all this software. And then at the time came when the guy said, you guys are in the clear here. We started up in the exact same business, stole all the clients, got that money funded us, because we had all this maintenance money from all these clients who we were now able to steal. And I started a second company that did the exact same thing, and eventually sold that company to a German bank.
So Paul, first of all, this is live and public right now, right? I mean, there's not a lot of people watching, but
it's so long ago that it's all legit.
It's long ago that it's legit. Do you? I guess if anybody's watching, did that other company? The way you've just told the story, it seems like they didn't necessarily deserve the next phase of your business. Do you? I
was very happy working for them. I mean, I was doing what I was supposed to do, but they fired me for doing things that I wasn't supposed to do. And
at the office.
At the office. We're not supposed to do them anywhere, but by doing them in the office, they gave themselves license to fire me, and they had a clear case.
So I guess somehow, perhaps if we line this up with the mysticism, we'll go with that as the explanation to how you kind of lucked out.
It is the only thing that makes a shred of sense.
Yeah, yeah.
I never understood how any of this came together, because I would tell people the story and I go, sounds like I'm a lunatic. And that's how it felt to me for years and years and years. And about, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, I decided that this was a mystical experience, which made everything make sense.
Makes sense. Okay.
Because none of it made sense before. You know, how does somebody all of a sudden know how to program, like boom, like that? How does somebody with zero experience get a job just like that? You know, it's like
there is some sort of logic to programming that maybe you didn't realize, or there's supposedly even some mix of, you know, mathematics and art. So maybe there was something in your brain.
That's how I got the way I got my first job was that I'm an artist and a musician. And at that moment in time, there was this thinking that artists and musicians made great programmers.
Okay.
And there's some truth to that.
Okay, so after sorry, the way I'm setting this up. After my Jewish friend sold your stolen company to the Germans, how do we get from there maybe to closer to here? I know you started. I know, like, whatever. That's the 80s still, right? So
this was still the ladies. This was towards the late 80s.
Late 80s. So just fill us in really quick from like 90 to 2010 or so.
So I quit. I quit this company. I became a consult. I did a year as a stockbroker, which was a tremendous education, but I hated every minute of it.
Did you use any of your software to help you with the stockbrokering?
No. This was so. What I always thought was my broker. You know, I had money at the time. I thought my broker actually knew stuff, and what I didn't know when I became a broker was that they tell them every morning what to say. And it sounds really smart, but they tell them what to say, so they don't necessarily know anything. They just say what they're told. And I did the same thing. So I spent a year as a stockbroker, quit that, and then I went into consulting for giant technology companies. I was doing strategic market research-based, whatever you call it, strategy. I was doing market research-based strategy for some of the biggest technology companies that there were. Companies like EDS, Texas Instruments, DEC, you know, Digital Equipment Corporation, IBM, all those kind of companies. I worked for them. I did this for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. And one day I woke up with this voice in my head that said, you're not getting any older. Rather, you're not getting any younger. That would have been cool.
Yes.
You're not getting any younger. You're not doing your life's work, and you'd better get busy. That was it. That was the message. And I'm looking around like, who said that? It was like a voice in my ear. I was like, who said that? I said, what's that mean? And it came over exactly the same way. You're not getting any younger. You're not doing your life's work, and you better get busy. So I took that to heart. Excuse me?
What year?
This would have been 1993 or 4, around then. And so that week I quit my job. It was later than that. It was 1995. I quit my job in this consulting business, which was a great job. It was like, if one had a job, this was the best job. I traveled all over the world. I talked to interesting people. I was doing interesting work. I was selling intangibles, which is always fun. And I was making a fair amount of money. So it was all great. And I quit that week. And I walked in. I told my boss I was quitting. He says, I knew you were quitting. He just knew. I don't know how he knew. He knew. And I didn't know what to do. And everyone around me told me I should be a coach. Everyone was like, you should be a coach. You should be a coach. And I was like, I don't care about people's problems. I don't want to be a coach. So, you know, I thought coaching meant you were concerned about their problems and There was executive coaching and there was life coaching. And I was like, I don't want to do any of those things. And I don't know about any of those things. And I'm terrible as an executive coach. I'm a terrible corporate politician. I don't care about, I don't worry about what the people are concerned about. I worry about making more money. So somebody says to me, well, I don't know who it was. I wish I did, because I would thank them with like great bouquets of whatever. And somebody said to me, don't coach the people, coach their businesses. And so I had never heard the term business coach before. It didn't really exist then. And I said, great, I'll be a business coach. And that brings us up to, you want to know how I got from there to here. That's how I got there. And I started coaching. I have a saying, which is, if God wants you to know something and you're not paying attention, then God will put that message into the mouths of anyone it can. Mm-hmm. And so this hit me, and I realized that, I think I'm supposed to be a business coach.
Okay. So
because everybody is telling me this, right?
So Tellman mentioned that he met you through StomperNet, which for people that don't know, that was like a pretty big deal in 2006, 2007, where they had a lot of
we launched around. We had a $3 million launch at the very beginning of 2009, so it went on for a while.
Were you one of the owners of that?
No, I wasn't one of the owners.
You were one of the business coach experts.
I was a member. I was paying to be a member because they had this very cool thing that was, they had created this monster link farm.
I thought you were I didn't realize that you were a member. I totally thought that you were somehow an advisor or part of the team.
I became part of the team. Okay, what happened was I was a member. I was at an event, and there was a woman on stage who was talking about systems, how to create systems.
Do you remember who it was by chance? You don't seem to remember names.
I have no idea.
It was a real person and not just a voice in your head?
Pretty sure it was a real person, and I'm pretty sure it was a woman.
Okay.
I was an expert in how to build systems, and my first information product was called Turnkey Your Business. And it was all about, and still is about, how to take any business of any kind and completely systemize it and have it be turnkeyed so anyone could run it. I figured this out from my software designer experience.
Right.
It's in the same zone. And I figured it out. I built the system out. And so I just seen this woman on stage who was terrible. And I don't remember her name.
Don't give it to us.
Yeah, and I wouldn't anyway. So I walk up to Andy Jenkins afterwards, who I don't know at this time, but Don Crowther introduced him to me. And I said, you know what, dude? If you're going to have anybody talk about systems, it should be me, because I know more about creating them than anybody else alive. And he says, well, that's an interesting thing to say. And we end up having drinks, getting terrible sunburns on the top of whatever hotel we were in. And so he says, that systems thing's so boring. I said, yeah, it really is. I don't really want to do it, but I have another idea. And the other idea was this thing I had invented called Formula 5.
All right.
And that was how I got involved with StomperNet.
I remember something about that, but I don't remember what it was.
It was a $3 million launch. That's the only really relevant part about it. And
well, but what did it teach?
Stomper, I'm sorry.
I'm still selling it. It's so funny that we're talking about this right now, because I am in the middle of a low-key launch of this same program. Yeah. Unedited.
We should talk about, if you've got a low ticket front end, we should talk about putting it on Warrior Plus separate. We can talk later. I'm doing consulting for Warrior Plus, so we should, we can get you some affiliates and stuff like that.
That would be cool.
Yeah. Anyway, so it was a $3 million co-launch, I guess, with StomperNet.
It was a launch. They handled the marketing. They were the marketing partner. I was the technology. I was the voice. Yeah. I was the voice, the face, the technology.
That's what Nitro was doing. Nitro had Nitro projects, and they did that. We launched the Nitro marketing mindset together, and so there was a time.
That was before Stomper, though. Nitro was before Stomper.
It's around that time, a little earlier.
But a bunch of the guys were having a lot of success, but they only had one course in them. But they had a system for publishing,
Right, they knew how to publish software.
So like we were in need of more, like there were a lot of people for a time that we were in need of more talent to create product that was compelling and effective and good, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because
And if you're good at drinking, if you're good at drinking old fashions in the burning sun, you can put those deals together.
Right, that's right.
Right on. I guess you did. And then so you did. That brings us to now. Not to now, but that brings us to our existence.
That was when was that? That was like in the crash, in the big crash in the aughts. So it was like 2008, 2009.
Yeah, somewhere.
It was before that.
It had to be a little before that, but it probably crosses over to where.
No, it was like 2006, 2007.
What? The crash?
Your launch. No, your launch.
Oh, no.
No. My launch was in January of 2009.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, no, I remember this vividly. We launched at the absolute depths of the last big recession.
Of what the rest of the world would have called the internet marketing crash, or the.
It was the internet marketing crash. I had to talk people into buying.
Yeah.
I had to tell them. I used to tell them then, and I say the same thing now. I just wrote a quick little product about it, which is that when the market's crashing, you take every single freaking penny that you have and pour it into marketing, because your competitors are terrified, as you should be too. You're terrified too, but at least you're terrified and taking action. Your competitors are terrified. They're trying to spend $0, and they pull it out of every budget they can, including marketing. So now what's happening is there's no new customers at this point. Nobody's got any money. There's no new customers. And the only people are buying stuff are buying out of necessity. And because there's no new customers, if you're going to get a customer, you're stealing it from your competitor. And if you're marketing and they're not, it's easier to steal their competitors.
Right.
So, and then what happens? And then whenever this apocalypse is over, then all of a sudden you've built up momentum and they have none. So you get a double win out of it. So this was my message at that point. This was how I was getting people to buy the product. Andy wrote great copy, and I had this great message, which was about how to save your life. How to save your business and how to save your life. And it resonated. And people really bought into this idea that, wow, we have to keep marketing. I mean, I've never stopped saying it. I've been saying this forever, which is that no matter how little money you have, it goes into marketing.
Yeah.
It's
important. And that's kind of, I would say it's even more than money. I mean, ultimately there's money, there's time, and then there's time of essentially your network. What do you or don't you have for resources? And like, if you have money, put that, you use that to grow your business to the best of your ability. But if you have time, use that to grow your business to the best of your ability too.
Right.
However you can get more visibility, like put everything you've got into growing while everybody else is all withering away and fading into the shadows.
Yeah. Currency comes in multiple forms. Currency is not just money. Currency is money. Currency is time. Currency is your network. Yep. Currency is all those things. And yes, I'm just going to repeat what you just said, which is that you take every little bit of that and pour it into, I call it marketing. I say business growth. You pour it into business growth. One of the things you do is you buy competitors if you can. If you know how to do this, Roland Frazier is the king of talking about this.
That's right.
But you buy competitors.
I haven't talked to Roland in a while.
Right.
So I haven't talked to him in a while either.
So for everybody that doesn't know who Roland is, he's the founder or co-founder of Digital Marketer with Ryan Dice, right? Or
he was not a founder. He was not a founder. He was an advisor, and then he became a partner.
Okay, and was it Ryan and Perry Belcher, you think, that were founders, or just Ryan?
Perry wasn't a founder either. It was Ryan and what's his name? A handsome guy, but a handsome guy with bad ideas. Can't remember his name. I suck at remembering people's names. I've never been good at it.
Pablo, who in your work today, who do you focus on helping?
So I work specifically and only with the owners of businesses. And, they call themselves CEOs, they can call themselves founders, they can call themselves whatever they want. I work with the owners of businesses. I work with the person who can make the decisions. So whoever that is, of typically businesses that they have a run rate already. They've proven they have a product that they can sell and that people want. And I call that about $500,000. Like if you've gotten to that number, then you have proven you have something that people want and you know how to sell it.
Yeah. If your business is doing that, like $500,000 or more in gross, or
in gross, that's what I say proves that you have a saleable product.
Yeah, so 40, 50,000 a month, and you're doing something.
Yeah, cool. And so that's kind of my low end, and my higher end is 10 million thereabouts. Yeah. And the reason I cut it off is because I'm a threat to a lot of people in the C-suite. I mean, I don't think so, but they think I'm a threat because if you're paying Lemberg $100,000, then why are you paying me $100,000 if I'm the CMO, right? Or if I'm the CTO, or if I'm the whatever.
What specifically are you helping them with that's that valuable to them?
So
what do you help those guys with?
Well, let's take an example. Let's take a guy who's earning $500,000 a year.
Yeah,
and he decides that it's worth $100,000 to hire somebody like me. That's a huge risk. It's a crazy ass risk.
I mean, that's a high level employee. That's a C-level employee to them for sure.
Right, for sure. But sometimes that's a 500. Yes, the 100K is a C-level employee that they typically can't afford at 500,000. But if I help them get to $1 million, that was a good return.
Right.
That was a nice return. And if a company's got 2 million and I help them get to 5 million, that's a fantastic return. So that's how it's justified.
So in what way do you help them? So I guess that's what.
So I help them grow. I help them make. I help them make more money.
Yeah. What are you helping them with though? So like
make more money, make more sales.
Is it? Are you finding windfalls of profit within the existing business? Are you giving them copywriting advice? Are you helping them with their like internal alignment and beliefs? What's
yes. Yes. So the answer is yes. I'm a strategist. I mean, more than anything else, I'm a strategist. So I look at, and I have the ability, and I've now decided, again, this is where, your belief systems get challenged. I've decided that this is a mystical capability because I have like 28 years of experience. I've got like tons of freaking experience. And I've seen, if there's something to see, I've seen it, So that counts for a lot. But then, you can have an encyclopedia. I grew up with an encyclopedia in our house. It was one of the things that my father won in a sales contest. We had all these things in my house that my father won in sales contests, and I never knew why we had them. I thought we had an encyclopedia because it was an important thing to have. No, we had an encyclopedia because we won it. And
so for everybody watching that's under the age of 40, an encyclopedia, it's made out of paper, it's large books, and it's literally a whole shelf worth of information. It's basically what Google was before we had Google, but only one little bit of information.
Right. It's the whole internet. It's the whole internet on
itself. It's the entire
and
internet.
Google is a million
in a 24 edition series. Yeah.
Yes, that's about right. Do they even have them now? Wouldn't think so.
Maybe. Oh, I'm sure you can buy encyclopedias.
Yeah? What would you do with it?
I don't know. Look at it.
I mean, Google's so much better than any encyclopedia.
AI
is better than Google. Plain AI is better than plain Google. We are advancing.
Yeah.
It's been a while. When my kids were young, my kids are young adults or older young. They're older young adults.
Guys, but, I'll be right back.
Okay. And whenever they ask a question, I would say, "There's this thing. It's called Google. Go find out." My father would say, "There's this thing. It's called the encyclopedia. Go find out."
Exactly. Yeah. Or the
So
library, at least. Go to the library, kid.
I lived in the Darien Library. I was close friends with the librarians in the Darien, Connecticut Library.
Connecticut, okay. Where are you
Yeah.
now?
I am living in a town called San Miguel de Allende, which is in the Central Highlands in Mexico.
In Mexico, okay. Is it
Yeah.
central Mexico? Are you far west or far east, basically? Are you Texas? Are you
No,
on
I'm in the Central. I'm Central.
So you're Pacific time or Arizona time?
I am currently on Arizona time.
Right.
But that changes in a few weeks. It changes, and I'll be on Central time.
Okay, so you're right. I used to live in Costa Rica, so I think we would have been on the same time zone.
Yeah, and the problem is, they're not the problem, but they don't change times. So
Right.
it's Central half the year, and it's Mountain the other half of the year.
Right.
If you're comparing to the U.S.
Right. Yeah.
So it's
Cool. Okay, so I thought so. Is that why you're Pablo instead of Paul now?
no, it
Okay.
has nothing to do with it. No, my father always called me Pablo from birth.
Oh.
And my mother always called me Paul from birth. I think they probably thought about what my name should be.
Yeah. When did they get divorced?
Well, the women always win that because they did the heavy lifting, right?
Right.
So the women actually get to name the children. But unless the father has tons of money and comes from a well-known family, in which case he gets to name the children.
Gotcha.
So, that's why I've been Pablo my whole life. And about 5 years ago, I decided to start using it just for the heck of it. So now I'm confused because I never know what to say. People say, "What's your name?" And I'm like, and I have to think about it, which is kind of a strange mark. Most people don't have to think about what their name is.
Yeah.
But I just figured to complicate my life,
My kids have to think when people say, "Where are you from?" Because they were born in the U.S., they grew up in Spain, they lived in Costa Rica for a while, and now neither one of them are in either of those places. So
people say "from," and I always say, "Well, what do you mean by from?"
Right, exactly.
And then I can answer the question. Yeah.
Okay, great. So where were we? We kind of got a little bit off when Tellman left.
Tellman, you took the mojo away.
Why don't I do this? Why don't I ask a question that doesn't have anything to do with what you were actually going on, but you might be able to help.
That's
me
fine.
answer. It's from the audience. It's a friend of mine named David Ferris. He actually works for he has some freelance stuff going on, but he works for Google with their UMM department, which is the mass market. He does strategy, buying strategy for whatever the Nikes and the Pepsis of the world. But anyway, He's asking, how do you calculate your worth as a freelancer? And he's saying, what's the golden formula if there is one?
How do you calculate your worth as a freelancer? Well, there's a presumption there that your worth is tied to something that you do for a living. Right.
Well, he means how do you? I think it's more like how do you know what to charge, not your.
Yeah,
oh, okay. That's a whole different. That's a radically different question.
How much should I charge as a freelancer?
How much should I charge for my services as a freelancer is probably a more accurate.
I have a simple way to. There's no straight answer to that, but I'll give you a good answer, which is you keep raising your rates like 5 or 10% each time you get a new client. So each time you're pitching, you raise your rates, and at some point, people stop buying.
Right.
And down a little bit, and then you're
because you've cost too much. I did this. I kept raising my rates, and at one point, I was charging $100,000 for my services, and that was wonderful. It's like money was just rolling in. But at one point, people stopped buying. So I was like,
reasons for that, right? That so many different reasons. It
sure.
Be
the environment could
how
change.
You come across. It could be a major industry shift. It could be a political thing. It could be going on with something with the stock market. Or all of these things.
But they all make you too expensive.
Right.
No matter what caused it, they all make you too expensive. And at the point that you're too expensive, people aren't buying again. You lower your rates.
Right.
So
the other way that I've seen that position too is to make a goal for how much you want to make and charge a lower amount, charge the minimum you're really willing to. And let's say I want to make $5,000 this month, So I'm going to charge. I guess I'll just, for better math, I'll say I'm going to charge $12.50 per client for whatever it is that I'm delivering. So once I hit 4 clients, now I raise my rates to see how
that works just as well. I mean, it's really the same idea.
Yeah.
But the gist is you set a rate, you could sell at it, and you go, cool, maybe I can charge more, and you go, cool, maybe I can charge more, and you get to a point where you can't anymore.
So I would say that's the first part of the golden formula that you're asking about, because the second part is, well, how do I make more money if I've reached the cap of what I seem to be able to make as a freelancer, right? And that's the next natural question. And that's, I mean, when I got started doing all this internet marketing and email marketing stuff, I was a local hypnotherapist, and I was charging $75 an hour to do hypnosis. And I worked with 8 to 10 clients a day, and usually 2 to 3 of those clients were free sessions that I was giving away for potential new clients.
Right.
And I lived in a small 10,000 person town that was slightly economically depressed to begin with. And so I went online to figure out how could I break free from trading time for dollars as I wasn't a freelancer, but for all intents and purposes, I was getting paid $75 an hour.
For all intents and purposes, you were a freelancer.
And I was working my ass off, and I still wasn't paying off my college loans. I was like, come on here. This is ridiculous. And so the idea is, how could I sell, and this is in the early 2000s, right? But how could I sell hypnosis CDs on the internet so my income was no longer attached to my hourly wage, right? And so what happens when you learn how to get leverage by either shifting your freelance business,
which is the name of my new product, is Leverage Levers.
Awesome. So, right? Exactly. So is you start by getting leverage by selling duplications of your knowledge, or whether it's in book form or course form or whatever, and then you can start working with groups instead of individuals. Once your marketing is good enough, that and then you have small classes and you go down that route. So,
that's if you're selling courses versus services.
Or you duplicate.
But then your services becomes consulting, and it's more expensive on the back end. So then you switch it up, so that you're not. And you kind of ideally keep on building up both over time.
Yeah.
Or you duplicate, and this is what I tried to do, create a franchise.
Yep.
And a franchise if you build a good franchise is a good way to get mega wealthy.
Well, I just read an interesting post from Justin Brook talking about Agora. The Agora, their model. They don't call it franchise; they call it affiliates. But Agora is like one of the biggest info product companies out there,
sure.
And they have the financial newsletter, and they do exactly that. Everybody thinks, Agora, it's one big company, but it's actually not. It's a whole bunch of smaller affiliates. What you just called a franchise. Franchise takes on different legal ramifications.
Yes, franchise is a very legal term in the United States.
Right.
Yeah,
but it's not everywhere. It's not necessarily everywhere. It just means like you're basically you're carbon copying a business model, and you're sharing some resources and
well, specifically, it means you've built a system, and you've proven that the system works, and then you sell the system to people and take a royalty off of their income.
Right. And when you say franchise, you're referring to the legal term franchise.
I built a legal franchise. And there's not too many coaching franchises. Mm-hmm. And action coaching is probably the biggest one. The dirty secret is that most of their money comes from franchise fees, not royalties. Mm. And what that means is that they're good at selling their franchise, but the franchise doesn't produce what it's supposed to.
Right.
And this is true for most professional services franchises. Mm-hmm. They all have the same problem. Which is that they're good at selling their system, but their system doesn't necessarily deliver the goods to the people who buy them.
Yeah, part of that's the people that buy them. It's maybe too low priced, or low skill needed, and then those people aren't really entrepreneurs. They're employee mindset, so they weren't able to. Franchisees
are not entrepreneurs. They're like a separate breed of their own.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Cool.
They don't have that entrepreneurial creativity. So one of the
They
questions,
want to be entrepreneurs. They want to work for themselves, but they don't know how to create. They're not creatives.
Right.
yeah,
So they
not-
buy
they
the
don't have that,
they
that
buy the
entrepreneurial,
creativity.
right? They don't have the entrepreneurial creativity. So one of the things that we like to ask or like to connect is you've been doing this for a while. Before I do this, I do want to ask, because I did have a note. You said your new course or your new book is Leverage Levers. What are some of the levers? Like what you're saying, how to leverage things inside of your existing business, right? So if you've got a I was going to say successful business, but whatever that means to somebody, $500,000 or more business, there's probably some leverage points inside of that business that you can, crank up.
So here, really simple one. None of these things are easy. So, simple but easy, easy but simple. I don't know. It's get better at conversion. Getting better at conversion costs you nothing.
Right.
It costs you doing the work to get better at conversion. So it costs you time, but it doesn't add anything to the expense line, and yet it takes the expenses and multiplies their value. Right? So that's a perfect example. I define leverage as less in, more out. I mean, it's a really simple point of view.
Well, something that really always turned me on to like digital marketing, digital response marketing, or direct response marketing is the fact that like, so conversions. When you say conversions, maybe people think you're referring to sales conversions. Somebody is.
I'm talking specifically about turning leads into customers.
Right, but so there's a couple of levers in there that all multiply on each other, which is
Yes,
what I find.
and that's what Formula 5's all about. Right?
Okay, right. Okay, so
right. So another level of conversion.
Rate, yeah, right.
Well, let's take a
go ahead.
Take a look at this. I mean, you have the same number of customers, but most people, and this is really true, and it's sickening. Most people sell to one customer, one thing, one time. That's what people do. So one of the first things I do when I come into a company as a coach is I say to them, make the second sale.
Right. What else you got?
Great. But let's make the second sale. And the second sale could be selling them the same thing again, or it could be selling them something completely different.
That's right.
But, or it could be some kind of upsell of some kind. But you make the second sale and you double your revenue. That's fantastic leverage. It's like unbelievable leverage. Here's another one that's very similar. Reactivate your old customers. I call it zombification, turning dead customers into live ones. So we zombify, especially if you have a big list of dead customers, because you've only sold one person, one thing, one time. So you've got this big list of dead customers and you zombify them, you reactivate them. That's a gigantic source of leverage. So you get better at conversion, you sell the new customers a second thing, and you reactivate all the dead ones. You have just done tremendous things to your business.
That's right.
Right? And that's just three of them. Ross, my partner, says there's 31 of them in there. I wrote them all down. I don't know what they are.
Well, Richard Erasmus says this man is phenomenal, and I'm not sure which man he's referring to, so we can all take it as a compliment. I think
we're all phenomenal.
I'm the only one who knows who Richard Erasmus is. He's the creator of the Erasmus college system that travels. Oh, it's probably not the same guy, but basically, you guys know what Erasmus is in Europe. Basically, you can go from college. You can go from country to country. He's probably related to the guy because it's a very unique last name, but he's probably referring to our host.
Wasn't Erasmus like a famous mathematician of some kind?
Yeah, I think so.
Right.
But they might not even be related. Maybe it's a really common name in Belgium or something.
I think it's a really old common name.
Right. So it's interesting that for me, we haven't been doing a lot of interviews, Tellman, but like one of the things that Pablo said was almost identical to Rory, which was talking about conversions as the best way to increase, and then just now talking about increase. Maybe Marlon didn't talk about this on our call, but Marlon Sanders told me specifically that you guys know Mike Cheney, he kind of went away from internet marketing for a little bit, was focusing on personal development. Honestly, I don't know if he would say this, but I think, his income went way down and he was coming back to internet marketing. And he was like, Marlon, I don't know what to do. He's like, you got that old list of 1 million people.
Yeah, that might help.
Why don't you crank that up? He's like, oh, they're dead. That's a dead list. He's like, no.
No. 1 million people, you can reactivate at least 50,000 of them.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a pretty decent list.
Yeah, especially nowadays. So it's interesting to see some of the same things,
it's all business. It's all, this stuff was invented by the Babylonians and the Sumerians. Okay. And not much of it has changed except the actual technology of delivering it. Right. So all this stuff is, I've heard people whenever I give a talk, in the very beginning, I tell them to stop thinking they've heard it all. I said, there's this voice in your head, and I know it, and they all know I'm like reading their minds, I said, there's this voice in your head, and it's telling you that you've heard it all. I said, this stuff was invented by the Babylonians and Sumerians. You have heard it all, except you're sitting here in this room listening to me, which means that you haven't put it all to work. Yeah. I said, what I'm going to tell you is how to do it in a way that you can do it, and we can all get rich. And they all love that. They love they're sitting there because the voice is going off in their head going, I heard this already. I know this already. I heard this already.
But what are you sitting here for? I think
I tell them, I said, you know what? If you really know it, the bar's open. Go have a drink.
That's right.
Right. And that's it.
Well, doesn't Ryan Dice even talk about this? Like he says that he keeps teaching the same stuff, even to his $25,000 group, because even they aren't implementing everything. So it's basically just reminder and repetition. And even some of the things you were saying, a lot of us might think of like Jay Abraham talking about the fact that the top 3 ways to increase your business is to increase the number of customers, increase the average transaction value, and increase the number of things that you sell to them, which is
that's what we just talked about. Exactly. We just talked about those things.
Exactly.
Okay?
Yeah.
There's nothing. There's very little. You know what? The only new thing I have ever seen is search engines. Right? Search engines weren't always the thing. When search engines came along, it was like, no shit, you can do that, right? And AI.
Yeah.
And everything else, take out search engines and take out AI, and everything else is thousands of years old.
Well, and probably the Sumerians are talking to you in your sleep and telling you what to remember,
Well, I actually believe that. So.
I know you do. I know you might. So I was gonna. You kind of ended up covering it in a way without me asking, which is just like, what do you take from? What's the foundation of business, which you really already said from your years in business, and then what has changed now? And you've said, AI is something that's changing, I suppose, but what has changed about business, your approach, people's approach to business, like now in 2024 versus, let's just say versus 2000. Let's not even involve non-internet days.
So between now and 2000, nothing has changed. Globalization. There's globalization, and globalization changes things. And the internet, it's like, where do I live in this little town, this little colonial town that doesn't even allow you to put up signs. It's like, it looks like an old colonial town. And I'm doing business all over the world. And then my favorite thing to do, what I really love, is work in the middle of the night when it's hot. So I was in Bangkok, and I was working with all my clients at like 3 a.m, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the morning. And I loved it. And I was like, that was one of my business designs, is that I was going to be location independent. Yeah. And I've been doing that since the middle 90s. I've been location independent since the middle 90s. I have never had an office. That's not true. I've rented offices, and then I rent an office, and then I quickly get rid of them. Because I go like, what am I doing here? Yeah. I don't need this office. It's more fun to work at Starbucks. So I'm like a location. So location independence has changed a lot. But it's a question. Is that fundamentally business or not? I think it isn't, because business is, find people, make them promises, and deliver against the promises, right? That's really it. And if you look at every single aspect of how we do business, it's find people, make them promises, get paid in exchange for the promises, and then give them what you promised them. And if you look at it, every single freaking business is that. The technology's changed. I remember when we sold my first company, we used fax machines. And it was like, we did this thing, and the lawyers were crazy. I mean, this is really funny. Fax machines were all new. So we didn't have one. We were at our lawyer's office, and they were at their lawyer's office somewhere else in the country. And the lawyers literally counted. They were like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and they both pushed send on one, so that it would be like nobody would be screwing the other.
Right.
And so, and the design of the agreement, and it's written into the agreement, that this agreement will be legal when the counterparts to the agreement are stapled together. So we had signed one document, they had signed another document, they pushed one at the send at the exact same time, and we stapled the two things together, and that was the agreement. I mean, it's like, that's crazy.
So everybody listening under the age of 30, a fax machine.
I told my kids, when we used to have fax machines, finally I realized they just did not give a shit.
It's not as good as our grandparents saying, when I was your age, I had to walk uphill both ways from home. It's like, I had to use a fax machine.
I walked to school. I did walk to school. It was a mile from my house, and it was my relief, Yeah. I would buy a bag of Zeppelis. Zeppelis are these fried Italian dough things covered in powdered sugar, and they're unbelievable. They're unbelievably good. They're deep fried dough covered in powdered sugar. And I would buy a bag of Zeps and walk home with them for a mile, and the bag of Zeps would last me almost exactly till I got home.
Perfect.
So it was perfect. No, didn't do this in the snow.
No. So we're getting close to the top of the hour here. Tellman, do you have any more questions for Paul? Or Paul, well, let's start there. Do you have any more questions for Paul?
I don't have any more questions. No, this is great.
And Paul, do you have anything else you might want to add? And for sure, tell people how they can get in touch with you. I think it's is it Lemberg.com?
Yeah, just as my name is on the screen, Lemberg, Lemberg, and it's Lemberg.com. And there's a contact us thing on there. So if you want to reach me, it's easy. My email address is p@lemberg.com. I mean, that's like pretty simple.
Okay. I do have another question, I guess. Since I did kind of, at least on my feed, I titled this, chaos, magic, mysticism, and marketing. So far, it seems like really the chaos magic aspect is just to kind of connect the dots. When you,
I'll tell you how the magic comes in. This is what I believe, and it's taken me a while to believe this, but I believe. So here's what happens. When I'm on stage, I say things I didn't know. And when I'm working with people on a one-on-one basis, I say things I didn't know. I've channeled a book. I actually channeled a book. I went to sleep, and when I woke up, the manuscript was there. And I don't actually remember. I had nothing to do with writing the manuscript. The manuscript got written. I know that my fingers probably typed it, but that's as far as my involvement goes. And it's a pretty cool.
On LSD at the time?
I was not. I have not done LSD in a long time.
Okay.
Right?
Mushrooms? I mean, help me out here.
No, I was on nothing.
Sleeping pills.
I was writing a manuscript. I was writing a manuscript. I was handwriting in my journal. And I fell asleep. I was sitting out on my balcony one night in the summertime, and I was handwriting in my journal. Okay. And when I woke up a bunch of hours later, there was a laptop on my lap, and there was a manuscript on the laptop. Okay. I fell asleep again because it was the middle of the night. I fell asleep again, and when I woke up, there was more in the manuscript. And then as I edited it, I was like, most of this shit I know, but some of it I've never heard before.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Which book is that?
it's the book is called The New Shift Manifesto,
Okay.
and the subtitle is For Conscious Business People, and it's
Okay.
basically about
Shouldn't it have been for unconscious business people,
what
and you
it.
wrote it when you were unconscious?
It should have been. What it's about is bringing spirit into business.
Okay. And
It's
is it published yet?
it was self-published. It's available on Amazon as a Kindle, and it exists.
Sorry, my daughter.
I have 4 books, but 3 of them I can claim authorship of, and the 4th one I have no idea. But the 4th one, in my mind, is the coolest. But the 3rd one was the actual bestseller. The 3rd one was a legitimate business bestseller out in the marketplace from McGraw-Hill.
Be Unreasonable.
It's called Be Unreasonable, and it's actually a really good book.
Nice.
He's like, actually, not only is it a bestseller, and I wrote it, but I actually recommend.
I wrote a book that I won't name the author or the book, but I read a book recently that could have been fit into a paragraph.
Mm.
And it's a huge bestseller book. People talk about it like it's the word of God given to Moses, but it's literally it's a paragraph.
So what book is this that you don't really recommend?
Oh, I'm not going to. I'm not.
I'm going to buy all your books just to spite you. So wait, I do want to go back to. I do want to go back to the idea that you were saying that maybe this book was written. Not maybe. You're saying that this book was written kind of in.
Oh no, this book was written by. I don't know who wrote it, but it was not written by me.
Yeah, it's interesting because, I don't know, man. 10 years ago, I would have just said, okay, and I just would have written that off as this, this guy's just thinks that's what happened. And then my belief system's changed quite a bit since then. I'm a big, too much of a reader of this book, Conversations with God, which also was, supposedly
it's a channeled book.
Yeah, he didn't realize it was channeled. He didn't call it channeled at first, but later people were like, you're channeling, right? And he's like, oh, is that what that was? And no, I'm gonna Tellman, I'm gonna expose you a little bit. You've never said that you've channeled, but you did say that you have a technique that a therapist taught you about. I
practiced with 3 shamans, man. I've done all sorts of things.
Right.
So
talk about it.
And there's techniques to. I mean, you can just
come on.
free write.
No,
you can free write and write stuff. I just happened not to be present at the time.
There's so many different ways. I mean, I slept walk a ton as a kid, and ended up becoming a hypnotist and all these things. So dancing between the conscious and unconscious, I've done a lot of work in that space.
Have you ever done? I mean, you do sleeping pills. Sleeping pills can leave you in this semi-conscious state.
That's amazing.
That's really weird.
Yeah.
And sleeping pill sex is the best. But
I will not comment on that because I've been alone ever since I've been doing sleeping pills. At least I thought I was alone. I don't know. Anyway, no, I'm just kidding.
But so chaos magic is really simple. Chaos magic dispenses with all of the fancy ceremony. You don't need a cape unless you want one. You don't need a wand unless you want one, right? You don't need any of those things. They have nothing to do with the magic. The magic is magical energy, right? It's getting a hold of the energy and containing it and then using it to do something. That's chaos magic. So chaos magic requires intention, right? Something that you very clearly want to do, a source of energy, and then putting those two together and sending them out into the world to make stuff happen. And mostly what I've done is I've healed people. I had an aneurysm that they basically told me that I was going to drop dead at any moment, that I had to stop exercising. I had to stop doing all this stuff because this thing could just tear open. And if I was too far from a hospital, that was going to be the end of it. So I actually believed this. I believed it. I saw the report. The report said I had an aneurysm. And I changed it with chaos magic, specifically sex magic. I used sex magic to cure the aneurysm, and it worked.
I'm starting to presume what sort of illicit things you were doing in the office all those years ago, and I'm starting to not sex, because all of a sudden we're talking about sex a lot. So you cured your aneurysm by using the energy from sex and intention.
Yeah, and it worked.
Okay.
And I've cured a number of people of a number of things all in the same way. I mean, it's all pretty amazing.
Is this a pickup line at the bar? I noticed
not a pickup line at the bar, because you can do it in your head.
Okay.
You can do it all in your head. I cured myself of ulcerative colitis by changing colors in my brain.
Okay.
I developed this theory that you could let your body tell you which parts of it were sick by showing you a color. Mm-hmm. And I didn't pick the color. I said, show me what the color is. And it showed me this dark pink. Mm-hmm. And then I said, well, all right, well, what would curing those sick parts be? And it was kind of a teal blue. Mm-hmm. And so I spent a year in meditation, an hour in the morning and an hour at night, looking for these colors and changing them. So I'd look for the pink parts and turn them into blue parts, and look for the pink part, and they would go back. You know, they don't stay in the color; they go back.
So you have to change all of it eventually, and some of it grows back.
You change them, and you change them, and you change them, and you change them, and eventually they stop changing,
right?
And the symptoms that you were dealing with go away. And that's what happened to me with colitis, which is an ugly ass disease that they tell you cannot be cured or changed or anything.
So just in finality, how do you apply? Do you ever apply that with your $100,000 consulting business coaching?
I get my ideas about what to do about the business pretty much from the ether.
Okay.
You know, some of it's logical. I don't want to be like, I don't want to be like making it up that all of this is fantasy, and that there are real things in businesses that are obvious to see if you've been doing this for 28 years.
Right.
You know, you walk into someone's office, they say ABC, you say you got a problem with XYZ, and let's just fix that and everything will be great. And that happens more of the time than not. But there are times, and there's a fair number of those times, where I walk into the client's office, they don't even have to start talking. I know what's wrong. Mm. And my only explanation for this is that it's a mystical issue, right? And sometimes the clients will tell me what's wrong, and there's no logical solution for it. But I say, let's try this. Mm-hmm. Let's just try this. And those things, I don't know where they come from. I have no idea. And I don't really worry about where they come from. I just know that channel is open and that I should trust it. It took me a while before I started trusting the material.
Well, but I mean, it's got to come out of your mouth and make some sense. You're not just like, you don't come into like a software company and say, have you ever tried selling bananas? Have you ever, you know what I mean?
I do not do that.
Right. There's going to be some logic to what comes out. And part of that is, it's look, that's called like there's some sort of brilliance or genius that happens, and there's so
right. I am always curious about what that is. Here's what I know. I know that if I'm not speaking, I'm not learning, and that if I want to learn something, I just need to talk to a client. And if I talk to a client, I will learn something. Mm-hmm. And it's just because stuff comes out of my mouth that I didn't plan on saying. And it gets said, and I'm like, okay, I don't know. I don't care where that came from. That's the magic, mystical part about it for me. And the big change, I think this happens for everybody, by the way. The difference is I believe in it.
You believe in it, but you don't let it get in the way, right? You allow it to happen. You don't rely on it happening and force it.
No. No, I don't. But it happens, and it's been happening for a while, And it took me a while before I realized that it was something more than just what is intuition anyway? Mm-hmm. What is it? Is intuition the combination of all the things that you've learned up till now, and your mind serving up the most appropriate part, and that's what I thought intuition was. But then I started to realize that that's not necessarily what it is. Intuition is just information that's flowing through you. And if you're smart enough, you keep the channel open. Now, most people who get these things shut them down. Most people think that if they just thought of it and they can't support it logically, then it's not a real thing.
Right. It must not be
You
valuable.
know, people say, and this is common, people say, well, that's not real. You can't explain that with science. I believe in science, by the way. I'm not a science denier. But there are things that science can't address. And those things, a lot of people discard those things because science can't address them.
Right.
But I'm figuring science is a body of knowledge. It has an appropriate target, and there are things that can be explained by science. But there are things which cannot be explained by science.
Right.
And those things, it doesn't make them any less real.
Right.
Yeah,
Channeling a book cannot be explained by science. It does not make it any less real.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting because I see Tellman's face, and he's in massive agreement, because I know that, like, I know his backstory, and he first, he used to study when you were in college. You studied like invisible things, right?
Lots of invisible things
that are scientifically proven. By the way,
can you give me one example?
Yeah, the radio frequencies.
One of the things I was like really getting into early on in college was peak performance and flow state, right? And I discovered, I was studying hypnosis, and I was looking into different shamanic practices and all these things. But then I discovered the Monroe Institute and binaural beats for the first time.
Really?
I've been listening to a lot of beats lately because I'm trying to maximize my theta.
Check out
binaural beats with flashy lights.
Check out Monroe. They're OG on it. They're the ones that the CIA scientifically.
Oh, really?
That it works. Yeah. I mean, other binaural beats work as well, but I still have Monroe stuff on my phone. Tellman.
Yeah, so I mean, there's no singular dividing line between mysticism and science. It's blurry, right?
Okay. It is blurry.
And science is always expanding to include more of the things that we previously had.
That's the cool part.
So it's not fixed, right? We're gaining more insight and understanding, and that doesn't mean science will explain everything, right?
I cured myself. The reason I cured myself of colitis was because of an insight I had reading, what's his name? Who's the guy who, he's Tony Robbins' friend. He used to be a doctor in Boston, and now he's a mystic. I'm terrible with names. I could give you their life history and not know, but the name is Deepak Chopra.
Oh, yeah.
And I was reading this thing from Deepak Chopra, and he was talking about resonance. And I was like, oh, I can use this to cure myself. It was just an idea that I see. He wasn't talking about curing yourself. He was talking about resonance.
Right.
And I was like, oh, I can use this to cure myself. And then people talk about quantum physics. I had a girlfriend who sadly died, but she believed that anybody who'd ever swapped body fluids was permanently entangled.
Okay.
That she believed that this was just another version of quantum entanglement. That if you'd ever had sex with somebody, you were connected for life.
Well, why not when you breathe the same air as somebody? I mean...
Well, this wasn't what she said. I'm just telling you.
That's fine,
Right. So it was like swap fluids and you're permanently connected. And I have, since that time, she died. She died suddenly. And I went into deep despair. But when I came out of it, I became a little bit of a sex hound. And I'm connected with every one of those people. Like
I would
more
have
than
expected you to say that you became celibate because you didn't want to be permanently connected.
No, she told me. So a friend of mine channeled her for me. And I know that this was real because she told me a joke that was a joke between the two of us that no one else knew about.
Okay.
So the woman who was channeling her could not have possibly known this joke. And so she channels the joke, and my girlfriend, who is now dead, starts laughing hysterically. And she says, How's that for a sign? You know, that this is the real deal. So she says to me, she says, I know you want to ask me a question. Ask it. And I'm like, I don't have any questions. She says, yes, you do. Don't be a pussy. Ask the question.
Okay.
And I'm like, I don't have any questions. She says, fine, I'll ask it for you. And she says, you want to know if it's okay to date other women. Right? This wasn't long. This was probably 3 or 4 months after her death.
Well, listen, what man doesn't think that?
Well, so she says to me, you think you're asking the question, can I date other women? And the answer is not only can you, you have to. She says, you love women and you love being around women, which means that if you're not, you're going to be miserable. So go for it.
Right.
That was how it.
Yeah, so you should totally move to Barcelona, where I just came from. It's a much
I
more.
I love Barcelona.
Yeah, it's very open and sex positive, and
Yes.
actually but we make fun of Berlin for being even more sex positive than. Tellman's back. Stop talking about sex.
Stop talking about sex, guys. Come on.
Yeah, his kids are probably in the house somewhere. So.
No, they're in school.
They're in school. Okay. Well, we better wrap this up. This has been one of the most interesting conversations I think we've had so far. And also there's some really good marketing nuggets as well as mystical. I don't want to call them nuggets. I want to call them.
They're not nuggets. This is the big stuff. The mystical stuff is simply, if you think that's what's happening, let it in.
Yeah.
Just let it in. Don't fight it. Because look, if the I call them they is all the spirit people, you know. If they want you to know something and they give you something and you don't do anything with it, they stop giving it to you. They only give you stuff that you're going to make use of. You know, this is what the Bible says about God. God only gives you stuff that you're going to make use of.
Right.
And they are only going to give you mystical stuff that you're going to make use of. So make use of it. If you want more, make use of it. But I want to talk about my 2 things coming out, and we'll just take a moment. Formula 5, we talked a little bit about. Formula 5 is widely considered to be the best info product ever made. People are still using it. We sold it first in late 2008, early 2009, and people are still using it. We did the coolest box that's ever been done, and people still have the box on their shelf. So whenever I meet somebody I haven't spoken to for a long time, they say, I still use your stuff. So Formula 5 is coming out great, and Formula 5 used to be sold for $29.97, and we're selling it for $4.97 at the moment. It's a really good deal and can be found on that site that I gave you. But the other one is a little small project called leverage levers. And it's just these 31 levers. Each of one provides tremendous leverage in your business. Each of one is relatively easy to implement. And I think we're selling it for $27. So that's about to launch in the next 2 or 3 days.
Cool.
Is that going to be on a on a sales funnel page, or you're just selling the book outright without any upsells? Or
it's not. The leverage levers is a set of videos and a transcript, and it's going to be available as a login from my site,
right.
And there will be a small funnel for it.
Yeah, great. There should be.
Yeah.
We're
and there'll be a small funnel for Formula 5 also.
Yeah, we're all about we're big believers in low ticket front end and some upsells that support the product. And then
exactly. I'm working on a program which is going to be a membership / mastermind. Ross wants to call it a mastermind. I want to call it a membership. Well, who knows what it'll finally get called, but it's called the Entrepreneur Alchemy. And what it is it's a combination, and everything I'm working on is a combination of business technology mixed with what I call practical magic. And I call it practical magic because practical makes the word magic less scary. Mm-hmm. So it's really magic. So it's all about business tech plus magic, and it's going to be a year-long program, fairly low ticket. Yeah. And
Sounds great. Yeah, this is why Tellman was also asking, like, who is your primary client? So for that, that's not only the $500,000 and up. That's for somebody that's even like all of this stuff that we're talking about, the Formula 5, which it's $497, not $4.97. That's
$497.
Right. That's a full course that used to be $3,000, and it's updated for 2024. Okay, but I'm just making that up, but I presume it's updated.
Yeah, no, it's actually not been much updated because everything in it works perfectly.
Okay.
The technology that it says to use to do it is out of date, and that's why I lowered the price.
Okay.
The technology is out of date, but anybody with half a brain will figure out what the tool is to use.
Right. Yeah.
But what to do in your business, that hasn't changed one bit.
Right on. And then you've got the leverage levers, which is coming out soon.
Yeah.
And then you'll have a back end to that, which is
leverage levers is a lead into Entrepreneur Alchemy.
Right.
And Entrepreneur Alchemy is for anybody. It's mostly it's my philosophy is this. If you know what to do, you've been listening to the gurus and the experts, and you know what you're supposed to do, and you're doing it, and it's not producing the results that you want, it's usually because of something inside. It's not external to the world. It's not the economy. It's not the exchange rates. It's not anything like that. It's what's going on inside you. It's your belief system. It's your ability to accept intuition as a functional approach. It's using energy to connect with people. It's all sorts of tools. I have this way to create, what's it called? It's called rapport. I have this way to create rapport. You know, rapport is like, oh, is that your family on your desk? You know, is that you holding that sailfish? You know, like that's rapport. On the other hand, the way I create rapport is I go into a light trance. I usually have a picture of the person I'm going to be speaking to. I go into just because it helps, it makes it easier. I go into a light trance and I create what's called an energetic bridge between me and the person I'm about to speak to. And I have this energetic bridge where everything's all smiles and nice. And then we get on the phone and we have perfect rapport. It's like,
you already feel good about them, and you've got that energy.
And they already feel good about me, which is like, I don't know, they didn't participate, at least not magic. Obviously. It's magic. It's magic. So we're going to be teaching tools like that. Cool. And I believe that the lack of those things, belief system more than anything else, is the thing that keeps you away. Hold on, there we go. That was it's a piece that keeps you away from being mega successful. So we're going to be teaching that along with the what to do in your business, and combining those two things, I think, has tremendous potential.
Amazing. Cool. That sounds really great. So Tellman, can you put Lemberg.com on the screen?
I can.
He had it there for a while.
I have one final question for you, and I'm going to totally put you on the spot.
Go ahead.
Tellman and I are relatively new business partners. We've known each other for 15, 20 years. We're doing something. We haven't talked about this at all on this call, but we're doing something together, which is we're teaching people how to do a virtual summit or virtual summit series, whatever you call it. And we've got to, we're building that. And this is not specifically towards that, but this is towards this these interview series that we're doing is not that, but it's us being together and being consistent and getting stuff out there. So anyway, I'm just wondering, like, do you have anything for us, like from the other side, from the mystical side? Do you have anything that you'd say to us? And we'll put you on the spot, and we'll pretend. We won't pretend like it makes sense.
Hit us with your best.
So I've never done a virtual summit myself, but in the early pandemic, I was part of a community of couples, and it's an unusual thing because most communities are like they're men or they're women. This was a community of couples designed for how to be a better couple. That was its purpose.
It wasn't a polyamorous thing.
No, it wasn't a poly thing.
Okay, sorry. Based on the previous, I thought.
No, that's true, and it could have been, and there were poly people in it. but it wasn't for
It
polyamory.
was for improving your
It was
your couple,
improving your
relationship.
primary relationship. And then the pandemic came along and we couldn't meet. So we started meeting on Zoom. And I'm thinking, oh, meeting on Zoom, that's bullshit. That's not going to work. Like it's good. We're going to lose all the intimacy. What's going to be like good about that?
Right.
And the meetings on Zoom turned out to be so much better than what we were doing live. And the biggest thing I think that makes Zoom things valuable is using the breakout rooms more than anything else. More than it, because people come to events. Most people, the smart people, don't come to events to learn. The smart people come to events to meet people.
Right.
So if you take that away from the virtual thing and it's all teaching, then it's just painful. You know, who wants to sit through all teaching? But if you make it mostly interaction in Zoom with some amount of teaching, I think these things actually work better than real events.
Yeah. No, if they're done well, they can. Yeah, and breakout rooms are a really, really good feature.
I think the breakout rooms are what make those things work, and that the emphasis should be on the breakout rooms, not on the content itself.
Yeah, I was involved in during the pandemic as well, a magicians summit where they actually made like a two-dimensional, like almost like it looked like a video game. You could walk around as if you were actually in a conference room. You could go to a table and you would be like us right now. You would pop up and somebody could show a magic trick to their friend or whatever. So I'm in total agreement with that. And that's, by the way, that's a little different than the type of virtual summit that we actually talk about, because we split ours up so that people are focused on one speaker per week rather than 12 all in one day. Which, you know,
I would still do breakout rooms.
Yeah, for VIPs or something like that.
No, I would do breakout rooms for all the attendees, even if it was just one speaker, because the speaker's speaking how long? An hour a day?
Yeah.
Which?
An hour.
Speakers are going to be an hour to 90 minutes. So, yeah, I mean, the reality is there are lots of different ways to do a summit, but we have one core model, and then there are variances that we're going to be teaching as well. But the basic idea is most of the speakers are going to be doing pitch webinars, right? So breakout rooms are great for interaction, but they're not necessarily great.
No, they're not necessarily great for pitch rooms.
It really depends on whether you're doing more of an educational event or more of a sales event.
Then what I would do,
different purposes.
Then what I would do, because I still think the breakout rooms are what makes these things. It's different. For your intention is to sell, but I would do the breakout rooms ahead of time.
I was just thinking
I would have the speaker. I'd have the guy who was the pitch guy do an intro. Yeah. And then I would go to breakout. I would give them what are the prompts for the breakout room. Right. Give them a good set of prompts for the breakout room. Let the breakout room things happen, and then go to the sales event.
That's a really cool idea.
Cool.
I think I've never seen that done. That's what I would do. Yeah. And then the VIPs get together after the pitch event, and the VIPs get together with the pitcher,
right?
And you close some sales.
Right. Yep. That's it.
Cool. Interesting. Cool. Yeah, very cool. Cool idea. Good thoughts on it for sure, and stuff that we can pass on to other people, perhaps.
Rock and roll.
Perfect.
Well, on that note, guys, if you're interested in our virtual summit boot camp coming up, type boot camp in the comments below and shoot us a direct message to make sure that we get it, and we can chat about that a little bit more in the not too distant future. Paul, this was awesome. Good. Thank you so much for taking the time today.
It was my pleasure. It was fun. It was a good way to start the day.
That's
right. There you go.
I've never started my day quite this way. It was perfect.
There you go. Start our day this way 5 days a week now.
Well, you do.
Right, but it's not 7 a.m.
That's right.
That's true.
Well, it's pretty early for Tellman, and he had.
9 is early, but 7 is earlier.
Yeah. Well, I got to get my kids to school in the morning, so.
Right. I don't have to do that anymore.
That's right.
Right on.
That's right.
Good. All right,
guys. Thank you
guys,
so
this
much.
was great.
All
Thanks,
right, thank
everybody.
you.
Adios.
All right, adios.
Toodaloo.